Hi, it's Hassan Jamal from Arabs in Media. This episode was recorded in Baghdad. I just got back from Baghdad, from Iraq, and the story you're going to hear has been personally important to me for a number of reasons and for a number of years. First, because it's not only about my cousin's experience during the Iraq War in 2003, but it's about how a family tragedy helped shape what my cousin did next to cope with the loss, helping dozens of families in the process. In our talk, there were some great lessons on life, some laughs, and even an unexpected interruption related to the many wars on Iraq. Please subscribe and share the podcast to help support independent content like Arabs in Media. And check out my Substack as well, Arabs in Media. And now, from Baghdad, let's listen.
I'm happy and ready.
Okay. Welcome to Arabs in Media. I'm Hassan Jamal, and I'm with Ahmed. Are we telling people the nature of us being family?
Yeah,
Why not, huh?
pleasure.
Yeah. Ahmed is my cousin, and we are live in Baghdad, and we're excited to be here where it all started. Not only the cradle of civilization, but where our family got its start. You've got a whole history of stories.
Each one of us, I guess, has his own story to tell. He has been through good and bad times that accumulate stories as years go by.
So for those who have read on some of the Substacks, some of the family background, I haven't necessarily put names to all of it. So we are actually in a room that my father spent quite a bit of time in, and your father, growing up. This is actually the house where they were raised. Quite a lot of history to be summing up in one place.
Yeah. Our grandfather bought this house in 1945. And that's when the family moved in. And as you know, it's by the Tigris River in Baghdad. So it's a very unique location that he was very proud and loved so much.
Do you remember our grandfather?
I was 2 years old when he passed away, so I don't quite remember him, but I have a couple of pictures of that time that I had spent some time with him. I know that, but I do not recall it, no.
Yeah. I never got a chance to meet him.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
He passed away quite young compared to his age and, that time. And as you well know, thank God, our parents have had a good years to live, and hopefully many more. But compared to their father, he died quite young compared to their age.
Yes, certainly by today's standards, but also it seems like then.
Yeah,
he was very young.
But he left a good legacy of sons and daughters who carried on his name, and hopefully grandchildren, and whoever is going to come after us would keep his name up, the family name altogether up.
Now, one of the things that I've known about him was that he spoke many languages, and this is something that I think genetically he must have passed on to you.
That is correct. He spoke, as I understood, he spoke about 5 or 6 languages. And this is something, I guess it is in the genes, because after 2 generations, I speak also 6 languages, and I speak them well. I love languages. It's something that, I don't study. It's just you interact with people and certain stages of life, and you pick up the language. I pick up the language rather easily. So definitely it's in the genes, probably.
Well, one of the things that is remarkable about your command of the English language is that it is not just grammatically solid, but your depth of vocabulary, it's almost poetic. Times that you and I have been catching up in the last day only, it's just, I think it's the way your brain works, is that you are like spewing out poetry. Sometimes you don't even know it.
Yeah, I guess it has to do with the way our brains are. I mean, languages, maybe some part of the brain is responsible for doing that, and some people, they can master it easier than others.
Yeah,
especially at younger age. I mean, I always said I have 2 more languages I want to learn. Well, currently I speak for sure English, Arabic, Spanish, Italian, Turkish, and Kurdish. And I always said, before I die, I want to learn German and French to complete the picture.
Yeah.
Not getting a chance to do that. We got a bit older. Our time is scarce, but hopefully when I retire, I will have time to do that.
There you go. All you need is an EU passport after that, because then you can just prove, hey, I learned the language.
No, the Iraqi passport would do fine. But maybe we need the quickest way to learn a language is to get to meet a girl from that language, and that's how we learn the others. And I think this would do the job quite well.
Many years ago,
yeah,
I met a woman through a friend, as a friend, and we were all meeting each other for the first time. She was in a relationship with a man from Turkey, and they were both in a symphony orchestra, and they both played together, and they fell madly in love. And but he spoke very little English, and she spoke zero Turkish, but they had this like intense relationship. Yeah. And years later, I was
it's called pillow language.
Years later, I was going to be driving through her area where she was living, and our mutual friend said, well, you must look her up. And I said, well, I really don't know her. I only met her once. And he said, no. You met her, so you know her nature. She's going to be very welcoming. And so I actually, in the middle of Alabama, now I called from a payphone while I was getting gas and a little bit of food. And she said, well, I insist you come over for coffee. And I said, well, I really have 3 more hours to drive, and I'm on my way to Louisiana, and this and that. And she said, I won't take no for an answer. And so we caught up, and she said, oh, yeah, I forgot the guy's name, the Turkish guy. We broke up. She goes, as he learned more English, I realized we had nothing in common. Once we were able to communicate, I didn't want any part of it.
It would have been better off without this communication.
But that's wonderful that you've had an appreciation and a love for languages and a love for culture. And I think it's one of the reasons that you've had so much richness in life, I think, in terms of your experiences. I know that for a period of time you were studying in America, and we didn't spend as much time together then because I was away in college, and you were in the Chicago area with my folks. And we're, among all of our cousins, I think we're the closest in age.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're
a bit older than I.
Just a few months.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were born within a year of each other.
Yeah.
So we've had all of these family stories between us over the years. From my perspective, we've been not only divided by distance, but divided by wars. Not that we're on the opposite side of wars, but that we are physically separated by wars, multiple wars over our lifetimes.
And wars, when you're saying separated by wars, separation doesn't have to be, as you said, physically, but, even, when you're cut off, completely shut off from your family, whether both ways. I mean, if you're in Iraq and you're wondering about your family news outside, or the people outside wondering about their news inside.
Yeah.
It's a very tough experience to go through. And I don't think many people around the world have gone through as much as Iraqis have gone through because of the several wars within our generation. Maybe other people in more stable countries have gone, their grandfather has gone through a war
Right.
sometime.
Right.
But for our generation, we've been through several wars, and hopefully this would be the last of it. Hopefully, future we won't have our succeeders would not have to go through that anymore.
Going way back, the way we used to communicate, it was, somebody in the family would write a letter because the phone was just expensive and complicated. So we would get updates through letters or through somebody in between who was maybe living in England and would communicate that they spoke with somebody back home or vice versa. But I remember specifically that, to place a call from the U.S. to Iraq back in the day, you would have to schedule a phone call through the operators. So you would place, I think, what they call the station-to-station call. You would call the operator and say, operator, I want to place a station-to-station call, and you would name the date and the time, and they would call a station in Iraq or wherever in the world you were trying to reach, and that operator would somehow try to communicate to the household that we wanted to communicate with to schedule it at the same time. And those phone calls, I remember, everybody talks really loud, just like the movies. The phone lines weren't as crystal clear. You could literally hear the little beeps and clicks in the phone call, and you'd sometimes miss a word or something like that.
Probably, usually it was recorded somewhere. Somebody was listening also on the conversation. So you had that influence, probably especially if one is calling the U.S. or somebody's calling you from the U.S. or you're calling the U.S. or Europe, and even. So that also maybe was part of the yelling part that you needed to make sure the family is listening to you.
Yeah. And that probably went both ways. Let's not think that the developed world is so innocent and everything is freedom and liberty. They had their ears on everything as well, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the midst of this, speaking of phone calls, one of my strongest images in my mind and memories of a phone call between us was after the second war on Iraq. So this was after Bush called Iraq being one of its enemies. I always joke around about this term. He called it the axis of evil. I always what is it called again? The triangle of terror. What is it? And he called it the axis of evil. And I remember watching him on the State of the Union bring this up because it was after 9/11. And I said, what? And I screamed at my television because I knew that this was just some bullshit coming. And so fast forward, the war had launched on Iraq after all of the trumped up accusations of Iraq having weapons of mass destruction, which they didn't. And all of this stuff was, years later, the rest of the world caught up to things that, rational human beings knew. And this was war is business and shaping politics and countries to somebody else's will. Now, that said, and I'm willing to edit this out if it makes you uncomfortable.
No, this is the truth. The naked truth.
Yeah.
The unsweetened truth.
Right. The bitter truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. As in wars, some very bad things happen, very tragic things happen, and not always the things that you expect to be happening or the way things happen. And I'll get to the phone call first. I had heard from my parents, and they had been in communication with either you directly or your father. And they said, Ahmed has a satellite phone. and he's back in Baghdad, and he is helping people find their family members because the word has gotten out to the Iraqi diaspora that he is there with a satellite phone. And so, of course, the telecommunications were down. They were bombed. And so satellite phones were with people in governments and media, I'm sure, but not with everyday people. And you just happened to have one because you had one.
I had one through my work, because I was the branch manager of a large company that was operating in Baghdad, distribution company. And for the business we're in, we need to communicate with our headquarters outside Iraq. And that's why they had provided me with this phone that I was using for our business and to get our loved ones know that we are safe, and the people we know and we don't know, trying to help them out to be able to communicate with their loved ones across the world.
I immediately thought when I heard this before you and I spoke that this was amazingly kind of you, but also incredibly brave. Because Baghdad was actively under attack. There were areas of the city that were being bombed and attacked and targeted. And here you were driving from point A to point B, getting random phone calls from people who were saying, please go check on my brother.
Right. That's correct. And it was something that, I've been through. I know I've been through other wars that I was away from Iraq. This was the first war that I was in Iraq. And the previous wars, my family had sent me out to England first and then to the States to complete my studies and to stay away from war. But it was very difficult for me to have certain times of year. Sometimes I could not reach them for any reason. So I know I had gone through that feeling of being away and worrying about my family back home and not knowing anything about them. And in Iraq, anything can go wrong, anything at any time. So it's more difficult, to have this worry to live with. And that's why it was for me something I just felt I had to do as much as possible, day and night, traveling around with people who sometimes I got strange people I don't know, strangers who heard of that I have this phone and that they can reach somebody on the ground, and they were asking to kindly go and check on their family and give me the address, because there was no mobile phones, no land phones, no communication whatsoever on the ground. And that's where I stepped in to help as much as possible. Some other uses, entities called trying to help hospitals, for example. As I told you, people were from outside trying to send any help that is needed. And I visited a particular hospital that needed a generator set, and that's what they informed them. They transferred the cash and we bought the generator and sent it to them. So it was difficult times on all levels. This was a hospital that belonged to a church, and even entities at that level had problems communicating with the outside world and with providing essentials. A generator set when there's no electricity. This is the main thing, that the most important thing that is needed in a hospital.
Right. This war had just started. This is the second war on Iraq. I know the first one was called the Gulf War, the Persian Gulf War, who knows what the official name was, but this was George W. Bush's war on Iraq with his coalition of Britain. And like I mentioned, the communications were down, and so you were providing this service, but this isn't what you anticipated doing, because you were originally going to be out of the country anyway. And it didn't happen that way.
Mm. Yes, we had been outside. We went with my family, close family, uh, to Jordan because, the drums were rolling and the war drums were rolling, and we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if there was, it was a nuclear bomb that will be thrown at Baghdad or chemical or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody knew what was coming. We just knew that it's big armies are moving to attack Iraq. So we decided that we need to take a trip to Jordan to stay away from the war. But unfortunately, we had an accident there, and as you well know, my son Haiduri fell from the hotel room we were staying in,
Yes.
and which was a big disaster in our lives. And so we, at that time, there was no flights to Baghdad. We drove back, and we buried him and we went through that. And but the newspapers at the time wrote about this incident. It was still in Saddam time, and the newspapers wrote that an Iraqi family had such an accident, and that we have a saying in Arabic saying that death would come to you even if you were in a tall, meaning buildings, or high buildings, meaning الموت سيأتيكم ولو كنتم في بروج مشيدة. Meaning death knows no location or place to come. So we are believers. We believe in God and His will, and we thank Him for His will, whatever it is. Even the death of my loved one Haiduri, we still thank God for that. And this is what we are brought up to believe in God and to believe in His will. And we went through that. It was very difficult. We still we don't consider. We still feel that He's with us somehow, somewhere, and we're hoping even the day we would pass, we would be happy to join Him somewhere and see Him.
You told me an expression or a saying or a story about how Haiduri was your angel.
Yeah.
Tell me how the expression worked again, or how it is framed that he was different and is an angel here.
Yeah. Well, Haidar, since he was born, the naming of Haidar was chosen by his mother, and she had a dream, actually. At that time. We are, a family. Iraq has this sects in Islam. There are Sunnis, Shias, others, and me and my wife are from different sects. She's a Kurd, Sunni Kurd. I'm a Shiite, Arab, and there's no difference between for this. But she had a dream of at the time King Hussein coming to her,
and that right there was when the power went out. Literally, we were at the house where my father grew up, having a very personal conversation, and the electricity went out. And we took a beat. When the power came back on, we picked right back up, and this is where things started again. That's a crazy place to stop, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we're picking up where we left off. We actually had a power outage, which is still one of the hallmarks of, I think, the leftovers of all the wars here. Infrastructure is still a challenge. Every time I've come back, though, I have to say things are improving. The construction is going and things look and feel better. What is your take on that before we jump back into the story?
Yes, as you said, there are things that are very apparent to the eyes of visitors of Baghdad from trip to trip, from year to year. Especially in the past couple of years, there has been big improvements in in buildings, complexes, large complexes of buildings of high standard or good standard. And there are still other matters of infrastructure that are still problematic, like electricity, sometimes very few times water, sewage, other things that are also infrastructure, important infrastructure. Those are, I know that they've been working on these matters, but the problems are very large and from many years back. And even since Saddam time, we had problems with electricity. So this has accumulated or has multiplied because since the change of Saddam, there has been a big use of electricity, multiplied by maybe 100 times, maybe more. The usage of electricity, the equipment that had come in, importation was open totally. It was very limited. Not every house had AC at that time.
Right.
Now each house has maybe 5 or more ACs, a small house.
Right.
So things have changed multiple times. The consumption has changed. And so whatever the planned increases of electricity supplies, still the demand is much more than whatever is being produced.
Sure. It must be really hard to future-proof the needs of a country that is advancing while technology is advancing and you almost can't keep up with it. It's almost like when you build a highway in LA, by the time you finish building the highway, it's not enough for what traffic is today. So,
and this is exactly what's happening here. But there are the positive thing is that there are mega plans that are being done and implemented, actually, not only plans. And there's plans of improving traffic, improving maybe a metro or something like that. Also a flyover metro, not underground, perhaps. That would improve greatly the traffic and the problems of congestion in Baghdad today.
Maybe the Olympics?
Nothing is possible.
No, anything is possible. That's right. Yeah.
You know, once you have a safe atmosphere.
Yeah.
And people in Iraq generally are very hospitable and they welcome greatly and love people visiting them. And we've had last year, I think it was, we had one large golf tournament that was done in Basra, and that was very successful. And people who came from across the Arab world were very happy to be here and to be in Basra, which is the third largest city in Iraq. So Baghdad would be even, or they, I think, would have loved it even more. But the world is a small village at the end, so you never know how things would turn in which direction.
There are things that we don't anticipate or imagine, and it's not a failure of imagination as much as it might be that we're just so tuned into our day-to-day, we're busy, we're occupied, our minds are focused on things, and then it takes us by surprise when something happens that we didn't anticipate. And I feel very inelegant bringing us back to the conversation where we were, because it was a very touching story. The power went out. But your son Haider, who was with your family, you all went to Jordan to try to get out of the eye of the storm until the initial first passing of understanding just how intense or dangerous this war was going to be for your family. He tragically died in an accident when you got to Amman. And for a little bit of cultural background, for those who aren't familiar, in both Islam and in Judaism, you are to bury the body within 24 hours. So just on the cusp of having gotten out of danger, this tragedy happens. And you all didn't even make the decision. You just impulsively went back in and buried your son
That is correct.
In the family plot.
Family plot in Najaf. And As I was telling you, I really feel that he's around us somewhere. I people tend to, when they ask me how many kids to have, I always mention him because he's part of the family. He will always be, and he's not with us. Maybe he's in a better place, hopefully. And as I was telling you earlier, I think with him, there's a saying that, or maybe they say it, that part of your heart died with him. And when you say we have a dead heart, or it means you don't care about events so much that might scare a normal person, or say, I have to Hajj, I have to be out of the danger, and so on. And no longer this is the case with me, because for me, when you lose, such an important part of your life, life has, you live your life and we continue. We're blessed to have Mira, my daughter, who came after Haider passed away. But for me personally, I feel really that nothing in this world would scare me.
And she, of course, also was a wonderful addition to your other son, Fuad, Haider's brother.
Yes.
And that I'm sure has been very important to both.
Yes, and Maya also. Maya is the oldest daughter, yes. And they're all blessings that we have in our life. And you always look at the full part of the glass. And that's what even though you go through big dramas in your life, you still look at the other blessings that God is giving us every day and every minute. And, we have good health. Thank God nobody's knocking on your door asking for something that you cannot give him. And that's a lot to thank God for.
And I as I can maybe observe, one of the things we would call it in the West a coping mechanism, but just after this very unexpected event, that was when you were, after the start of the war, driving through Baghdad with the satellite phone, helping other people find their family members.
Yes, it was like, God directed me in a way to help these people around us in Baghdad, or even the world. As I told you, I've been through that, being completely shut off when I was in the US. And there are times that you're completely shut off with your family. And that is a very horrifying feeling for both sides. People inside worrying about the people outside, and they're worried about them. The mother is worried that, oh, my son is in the States, for example, and he's now very worried about him. They might be safe. The people in Baghdad, for example, they might be, no war or damages around them, but still they're worried about the person outside and what's going through their mind. Their worry for his family, his or her family.
It's true. And just imagine not having that family connection. I always think of a memory that, even if I couldn't ever find the photograph of us, it was when we were swimming in the Tigris River.
Covered with mud.
Covered in mud.
Enjoying every second of it.
Yeah.
And it's a picture, but it's a picture, as they say, worth 1,000 words. It was us and our extended cousins. We had Zainab with us, Hussein, I think, also.
Yeah.
And it's something that is just stuck in memory of pleasant times of childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of summed it all up. It was like a moment in time. And we were, swimming on the banks of this little sandbar in the middle of the river.
Yeah.
And it was very muddy. And just like all of a sudden, we all started caking ourselves with mud. And because it was summer, and it was so hot. The mud would dry instantly.
Almost, yeah.
And you were almost like a frozen statue at that point.
You still remember that?
I still remember every detail of that.
Maybe 50 years ago.
Yeah, at least. Or somewhere around there. I'm not that old.
I'm sorry. Oops.
So that was a momentous time. But like, as you and I catch up on different stories, I mean, this is just one of many things that have happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it always really stuck with me, because I remember literally the day I was at work and my mother had called me to tell me about what happened with Haidar. And I was just so sad. And I also thought, nobody here will understand this. And it just felt so tragic that it wasn't something that I could help with from where I was. And it wasn't something that even outside of the family was, acknowledged. We didn't have social media to be able to share something like this and maybe receive comfort from strangers or other people that we knew. And this was not my direct loss as much as it felt like a loss to our family as a whole and to humanity, because people just, in times of war, particularly in the U.S., have always been my experience that it was just very easy to go to war because they could just diminish who we were going to war with as not being like us.
While as human beings, we are so much alike.
Yeah.
Around the world, I mean, human beings are human beings. Backgrounds might be different. Their taste of food or colors or clothing might be different, but
Music,
core. Eventually, humanity is basically the same. God created us equal, one way or another, for colors and our backgrounds.
Yeah.
We have here now today in Baghdad people from around the world. The lady we have at home, she's from Africa, but she's so sweet and kind and human, taking care of our father, who's older age now, and as it's her family, it's her father. And I'm sure this is true around the world. And the core of all humans, this love for other humans is there.
Yeah.
It's just that perhaps experiences that one would go through, and the bubble you were talking about, that different types of bubbles that people are in, that they, in a way, are forced to step away from humanity and from these natural, perhaps human feelings that we should have.
I really want to thank you for sharing this story. I know it's not easy, and I know because this podcast, this episode is audio, not video, how much it affects you. I know it's not easy.
Well, it's always, it's part of life, as the French say, c'est la vie. And we all have different things that we are written. And in our religion, we say it's qadar, meaning it's your destiny. It's already written somewhere that you have to go through this. And we believe in that, and we cope with that and live with that. And I think it's this belief that keep us going and keep us kicking and trying for a better tomorrow and a better today. And life. Wishing our family, our loved ones not to have to go through what we went through, which was very difficult times, wars and losses. And we hope that they would don't have to suffer or endure such matters anymore.
So on that note, and tying into a miraculous glass half full perspective on life, one of the things we try to wrap up each episode with is a positive story or positive recognition I call it the shout out. So you want to shout out this person or that book or this show or that person, whether that person is just an inspiration generally or something specific that they did. Is there anybody that you want to recognize or anything in the shout out segment that is doing good things or is inspiring the world or inspiring you?
That's a surprise.
Forgot to mention that one.
Perhaps it's not a person that is living now, but you still read about him and read his words and wisdom. And I'm not a religious person, but I always read and hear about Imam Ali and the big deeds that he was wording, that he used to come up wisdom, really, that he was full of and was sharing continuously. One of the nice things that we, as a family, always, my father tells us, it's a saying that Imam Ali said, which is, in Arabic, it says, اكسب صاحبك بالبينة لكي لا تخسره بالغموض, which translates to win your friend with transparency before you lose him with vagueness. So the more transparent or frank you are with your friend or family or whatever they are, it's better than losing them with being vague, unclear, and something that they cannot read into you, what's going through your mind, what's going through you. So the more transparent you can be, the better it is for all people around you. Even if, it could be something they don't like or they dislike or they whatever, but still, at least you're transparent with yourself and with people around you. And they don't like that, it's their problem.
Right. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's so wise. And I would add to it, and I don't know if this would go with the original saying, but it doesn't have to be unkind. In fact, I think being transparent is kindness.
Definitely.
You don't have to make it hurtful.
No, not at all. Being transparent, meaning that even if you're disagreeing with somebody, you can tell him that you are disagreeing with him and this is what's going through your mind. You don't have to say, yes, I agree with you, or keep quiet and you're disagreeing with him. And that's what I really believe. Being transparent is telling but things that this is what my mind is telling me. And I'm free to think what I'm thinking, but this is how I'm feeling. And if I'm wrong, you can correct me. You can show me the way. You can tell me, no, you're not seeing the right angle of this issue. Let me show you. Come and look from this angle. Maybe you'll have a clearer picture. But at least I'm telling you what I'm feeling and what's going through my mind and how I am seeing things. So it's better than being vague and perhaps agreeing with a person that you don't agree with, or just being quiet and they are thinking that you're agreeing with whatever they're saying. And then you're in a different ballpark.
And Imam Ali, just for a moment of levity, we were driving earlier today in Baghdad, and there was a picture in the back of somebody's car.
Yeah.
And I was like, that looks like Jesus. Is that Jesus? You're like, no, that's Imam Ali. I'm like, if you were anywhere else in America, you'd be like, oh, that person.
Yeah. It's the same beard, similar beard. And
very, like the hair, everything.
I think it's an imaginative figure, even for Christ. For Jesus, I think it's somewhere in history, somebody drew something that they would think how Imam Ali would look like.
Right.
Because it's not a picture, so it's at the end it's a drawing. And I think it's a sense of this person being there. It's at the end, it's all the same God that we worship. And we believe that, at least in Islam, that this is that we all share the same God, and the books of God, which is Judaism, the Christianity, and Islam. We have so many things in common that we need to focus on. And again, the full part, the full part of the glass. There are some things that we disagree on, but at least if we agree on 80 or more % of
Right.
whatever is life is about, I
Right.
think that's more than what a man and wife would agree upon in the same house.
Yeah, we could always just chalk it up to, hey, what's the difference of a couple of profits between friends? We're like pretty much aligned on everything else. So like, just chill.
So true.
I want to thank Ahmed, my cousin,
Pleasure.
for being here in the room where our parents grew up, our fathers
Grandfathers also grew up here.
and our grandfathers. It's just,
This house has been in their possession since 1945, and it was built in 1917. It's over 100 and almost 108 years old now, in good shape and rational. This is it has become an icon in Baghdad, and it was just added this year to the Arab tourists as a destination to visit, because Baghdad this year has been announced to be the tourism capital of the Arab world. So it's one of the destinations that was added to be visited by visits to Iraq.
it's a remarkable home. Can we put the link in the podcast notes?
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. That's wonderful. Great. There is an Instagram page for the house. Do you know it off the top of your head?
Yes, it's Wattar Heritage House. Wattar Heritage House.
There it is. ALWATTAR period heritage period house. But we'll include that Instagram link in the notes and in the Substack article. Subscribe, follow, write a review, enjoy, share, live life. We only got one. Thank you, Ahmed, for joining us on Arabs and Media.
Thank you for having me.
Anything else?
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry too. Let's go eat. All right.
Okay.